Hello and welcome to my studio. I'm Lydia and today I'm going to show you how to make the Milkmaid blouse. This is a beginner friendly tutorial. My last tutorial that I posted is the dress version of this. And if you don't already know, this pattern is free to July 22nd. This is because June is my birthday month and I wanted to make the pattern free for a month from the day that I posted the video. So definitely check out the link below in the description. Also make sure that you print this pattern with Adobe Acrobat. There's also a free link for the program download. I use it to print everything. The bonus with this is that you can also choose the size that you want to print. Make sure that you view the instruction file, just read it and it will clear up so many of your questions. And if you're struggling with printing or just understanding how to put together my pattern, please view my very comprehensive PDF pattern assembly tutorial, which is also linked below. If you end up making this blouse or dress, I would love to see it. Just tag me on Instagram. I'd love to encourage you. I'd love to be amazed and surprised as I have been with so many posts that I've already seen. After this, I'm going to be continuing my beginner series and focusing more on sewing techniques and making beginner-friendly garments. So definitely subscribe and ring that bell so that you don't miss a notification for this video. And without further ado, because I've been talking for forever, let's get started. Hello everyone, I just wanted to give you a heads up that I'll be showing you the sewing instructions with 3 different colored fabrics since I missed some shots when filming the blue linen blouse. I just want this to be as comprehensive as possible, so I hope you enjoy the Technicolor tutorial. For materials, you will need my pattern, of course. Fabric, check the instructions file for the appropriate yardage. You'll also need a 10-inch invisible zipper, matching thread, elastic, and twill tape. When cutting, you only need to cut the shell amounts with the exception of the bodice cup, which we'll cut 4 times to add structure to the bust area. You can fold your fabric lengthwise, parallel to the selvage, and make sure you place your pattern pieces with the grain line parallel to the selvage of the fabric. So the selvage is actually the side of the fabric that has a finished woven edge. All of my patterns have seam allowance built in. The seam allowance for all pieces in this pattern is 1/2 inch or 13 millimeters, except for the bust tie piece. You'll want to start by overlocking your pieces. Here's my guide. You want to overlock where the pink lines are located. For those of you who don't have an overlocker, no worries at all. Just set your machine to a zigzag stitch and sew along the edge of your fabric, and this will do the job in keeping it from fraying. Okay, let's get our bust ties sewn up first. You can fold your piece in half lengthwise, then in again on each side, and then in half again. I also like to use this bias tape maker, which makes all of this very easy. So if you have one of those, you can also use that. Before sewing your bust tie, you want to fold the end down to create one finished edge, then fold the strip lengthwise again and sew it up. And remember to backstitch at the beginning and end. That's Pepper. She always plants herself in the middle of my work to nap. So after pulling out my pieces from under her with much difficulty because she's way too cute, I got out all the bodice pieces. Sew all of your bodice pieces right sides together at 1/2 inch or 13 millimeters. I sew the seam allowance to the outer shell of the fabric. This is called top stitching. Sew the back pieces together as well, but you want to sew it into one full separate back piece. I didn't do this on the light blue blouse, so just ignore that. Here is how it should look, one complete back piece. So what I would do is sew the center back seam of the back bodice to complete this. Next, the bust cups. There's a notch at the center front about 1.5 inches or 4 centimeters up from the bottom. Place your bust cup pieces with right sides of the fabric facing each other. Sew from the bottom up to the notch, making sure that you always backstitch at beginning and end of all your seams. Otherwise, you'll have your seams coming apart, and that is no fun at all. Press these seams open, and then we are going to turn in the open half 1/4 inch or 6 millimeters twice, and sew a little rectangle to keep it in place. Place your finished pieces with right sides facing and sew up your 1/2 inch or 13 millimeter seam allowance along the top of your bust cups. Once you flip it out, you can sew 2 rows of stitches starting a 1/2 inch or 13 millimeters from the sewn edge and 3/8 or 1 centimeter apart. It is at this point where you feed through your prepared bust tie with a safety pin, making sure the enclosed end of the tie comes out the center front of the bust cups. Then overlock or zigzag the raw edges of the bust cup. Now set your stitch length to its largest setting. We are going to sew 2 rows of basting stitches within the seam allowance of your bust cups, between the notches. Then proceed to pull your 2 bobbin threads until the bust cup gathers to the width of your bodice bust cutout. To apply the cups to the bodice, snip about a 1/2 inch or 13 millimeters in the center, or unpick the stitches there. I unpicked the stitches and then I had to go and sew a back stitch so that it doesn't keep unraveling, so do that if you need to. I heard some people were having trouble with this area, so let me try to explain it just a little bit better. You want to place the bodice cups at this point so that there is a square of the centerpiece exposed. Then you sew 1 bust cup, making sure everything is flat as you approach the point. Then lift your presser foot, pivot your fabric, and adjust the fabric so that it's flat underneath, and sew the other side of the bust cup. Just take this slow, and if you mess up, no worries, just try again, you'll get it. Then, just to keep that seam nice and crisp, push your seam allowance down toward the bodice and top stitch it. Moving on to the sleeve. With the right side of your sleeve facing down, fold up the hem of your sleeves at the lower notch. There are 2 notches there because I make the sleeves slightly different in my more intermediate level Milkmaid sewing tutorial. You can pin in place, then sew 2 rows of stitches, making the rows 3/8 or 1 centimeter apart and about 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters from the fold. Then you're going to need some elastic, and you want this to be 1/4 inch elastic. Cut your elastic to the size of your bicep plus about 2 inches or 5 centimeters. Then feed the elastic through the casing you made on your sleeve and then just secure those ends with a stitch. Now let's get the hem ruffle ready. Take your 2 hem ruffle pieces and with right sides together, sew one side at its 1/2 inch or 13 millimeter seam allowance. You can also double fold the raw edge of the hem to finish it. It will be easier to do this before you gather. Now the seam will match to the closed side seam of the bodice. Side note, we actually haven't done that part yet, so just hang on. So that means that the entire hem ruffle needs to be gathered to match the bodice hem front and back. So you want to sew 2 rows of basting stitches along the top of the hem ruffle, then grab your bobbin threads and pull them to gather to the length of the front and back bodice. Now that you have all of the components ready, we're going to assemble them in such a way that will allow for a side access zipper. I think you'll find it helpful to place everything as I have placed it. All of these pieces are laid out with the right side of the fabric facing up. The sleeve that will be placed on the zipper side of your garment should have a double notch to the left when looking at it. The double notch indicates that this side of the sleeve matches to the back bodice armhole. The other sleeve will be opposite, so the double notch should be on the right. Fold this sleeve in half with right sides together, and you're going to be sewing up that underarm seam. Next, the back bodice piece will be placed right sides to the front bodice, and we will sew up the seam to the right. And to clean finish the top of the back bodice, we're going to fold it down a 1/2 inch or 13 millimeters and sew in a piece of twill tape just to keep that seam from stretching out with wear. So let's head over to the machine to do all of these steps. First, I'm sewing the twill tape to the wrong side of the back bodice within the seam allowance. Then I fold it over a 1/2 inch and sew to finish the edge. Next, I'm sewing up the one side seam of the front and back bodice. Again, 1/2 inch or 13 millimeters like every seam. And thirdly, sew up that underarm seam on the one sleeve. Okay, we're almost done. Give yourselves a little pat on the back for getting this far. And if you're a beginner, give yourself an even bigger pat on the back because you got this. Okay, so first turn out your sleeve and match the underarm seam on the sleeve to the seam on the bodice, and you're going to sew the sleeve to the length of the bodice armhole. For the other sleeve, match the back of the sleeve with the double notch to the back armhole of the bodice, and the front of the sleeve to the front armhole of the bodice, right sides together, of course. Now that I've sewn those together, it's time to add the hem ruffle. Lay out your bodice hem and with right sides facing, pin the hem ruffle to the bodice. Make sure that you match the side seams together. Then you're going to sew this at a 1/2 inch or 13 millimeters. So now what I'm showing you is the top stitch. I've already sewn it at a 1/2 inch, and now I want you to push the seam allowance towards the bodice and sew it to the bodice. Before we add the zipper, let's just finish up the sleeve cap. We need to fold over the cap of the sleeve to create a channel for the elastic. But as it is, it won't fold very nicely. So I have sewn a large basting stitch around the entire edge of the sleeve caps in the area that's not attached to the bodice. So I want you to do that, and then pull your bobbin thread to create a slight gather around the sleeve, enough so that when you fold it in, it lays flat against your sleeve. You want to fold it in about a 1/2 inch and pin it all in place, and then sew it down on each sleeve and feed through your elastic. I used an 11-inch or 28cm elastic length for each sleeve, and then I tried it on. When I put it down, it just kind of like hangs there. So I'm going to actually reduce it by an inch, and that should be good. But I'm loving it. Are you loving it? So as I said, I'm going to cut it off another inch just to make it more comfortable. This is with a size 8, so if you're a bigger size or you're particularly tall, maybe start with a longer length of elastic, and this is also based on your comfort, and then just adjust it as desired. So once you're satisfied with the length of your elastic, sew the ends of the elastic to your sleeve. I made kind of a triangular shaped stitch to keep all of the points in place. You can also just do a simple straight back stitch, of course. Time to sew the zipper, woo! Everybody loves sewing zippers. Because I sewed my sleeve a bit shorter, my zipper is a bit long. It's not hard at all to shorten an invisible zipper. I walked the zipper along the sleeve and established where I want the zipper to end. That's about 1/2 inch or 13mm from the hem of the sleeve. So I mark that area, and then I take a needle and thread and sew a simple stitch around the zipper teeth at that point. As Pepper inspects, and might I add, grants her approval of my work. She's the sweetest sewing companion, though she does often make sewing eventful and interesting in a somewhat irksome fashion. Then I cut off the excess and burn the end to keep it from unraveling, because we do not want unraveling on our zipper, because we do not want to replace that zipper. With some difficulty, I retrieve the zipper from my eager sewing companion, so that I can show you how to sew this thing to finish it, for goodness sakes. So with the zipper open, I place it right side to one side of the bodice. I place the edge of the zipper just above the hem of the ruffle, and I pin it in place. But actually, before we do that, let's sew up a tiny section of the sleeve at its hem. So, turning my blouse inside out, I'm placing the hem of the sleeve right sides together and sewing just a small little section, about 1/2 inch, backstitching at the beginning and end. Definitely don't skip that. And now we can place my zipper. Pin both sides of the zipper tape to the bodice as shown. The bodice is inside out, as you can see, but I'm placing the zipper on the right side of the seam, and you can see where the little zipper tab is placed right at the opening. Now sew up each side. I find it helpful to just do a little pre-stitch along the edge of the zipper tape just to keep it in place. It makes it a bit easier when I sew it up with the invisible zipper foot. It's going to look odd like this, so we're of course going to use that invisible zipper foot and sew up each side, backstitching at beginning and end. Definitely super important. And you see how close to the zipper teeth I can get with this machine foot. To finish the entire blouse, just fold back the seam allowance and stitch it in place with a back stitch in line with a ruffle hem stitch, and we're done! Check it out! Before I model this for you, I'd like to thank you for watching and invite you to like this video and subscribe, ring that bell. Remember to tag me on any of your makes so that I can see them. Also, I will be tackling pattern alterations for fit and style in my next video. So if you have any questions about that, comment below and I will try to address it in the video. And please let me know if a link is not working or something so that I can fix it right away for you guys. Thanks again and have a lovely, lovely day.